There once was a man who wanted to capture more than anything the beauty of his beloved wife. He wanted to be able to record and immortalize the profound admiration and beauty that he saw in her, her love for him. And so he went off to study at the world's greatest colleges, art houses, etc. He studied about painting. He studied about being able to capture on film, digital media, whatever it is, the great scenes of the world. And he became very good at art, right? He studied, he became incredibly proficient at understanding why other pieces of art were excellent, being able to break them down into their base strokes of the brush, of the understanding of camera settings. And at last, when he felt his bones creak and the press of time upon him, he returned home to find his wife had died. I want to talk to you about why understanding, right, is not wisdom. And that there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about always learning, but never coming to a knowledge of the truth. We have in our world today, and honestly, I think this is a human experience kind of thing that you will find throughout all of human history. So let's not get particularly precious with we live in a uniquely different time. We do in some senses. ChatGPT was never a thing that Socrates had to deal with. But the same human impulses and proclivities and psychologies, we haven't evolved that far from things even a few thousand years ago in the grand scale of things. We tend to want to really understand our world. I tend to really want to understand myself. But it's very easy to allow understanding to subtly and sneakily, salaciously, right? Like just very, it's super sexy to think if I just learn about more of the things to think about, then I can do the thing. A number of years ago, I had a friend who I was talking to about photography. We were talking about various hobbies that we were into. And he pointed out that it's very easy to get lost in watching a ton of YouTube videos about photography, only to realize that you haven't taken a picture in weeks. And I felt very humbled by this, very, very chastised in the best way, because I knew it applied and I'd been doing it. We do this a lot with our understanding of our own mental health or our own proclivities, right? We tend to turn understanding of the neurotypology that we have into a reason why we can't do something. I have ADHD, so concentration is hard. So thus, I'm not going to be able to be a good project manager because it requires a healthy dose of executive function and being able to keep track of lots of, balls in the air as you're trying to juggle things. Maybe. But the only real determining method I have for if I can do something is to try and do it and see how it went. Trust me, there are times where I am highly aware that for this idea of ADHD, it makes things more of a struggle for me than what it seems to be for the people around me. Okay. But remember how many things in life are really just kind of made up games, right? They're constructs that humanity said, we just kind of unthinkingly, unknowingly got together in the zeitgeist of this kind of soup of human proclivities, human desires, and we just kind of gravitated towards this idea. There are many things that, if examined, look silly. There are some things that I think if you examine look really great. I quote from the Bible because when I study the Bible, I find it to be very in that same way as my friends, relating that, hey, if you're not taking photography, like if you're not taking photographs, you're not really doing photography. You're just watching someone else talk about it. And there's a difference there. I find that same kind of loving correction, right? That's what I mean when I really hope for chastisement, not, finger wagging. And yeah, I guess like there's some scriptures in the Bible that you could point to that way. I see a lot more of it, especially in like New Testament kind of writing, as a invitation to try, in our analogy here, to try and take the photograph of your wife. And if it doesn't quite come out, then learn from it and take another one. Stay with the subject. The reason why that parable was so meaningful to me is because there is one resource we cannot spend we cannot get back once we've spent it. It's time. I used to think money was a really big deal, but I've seen enough of the world in my little slice of it to understand that there are people that have a lot of money who still don't feel it's enough, who have amounts of money that they've described as not life-changing that I've coveted, and yet neither one of us were happy focusing on what we had money-wise. It's so easy to get lost in the time, is my point. It's so easy to think, well, as Pink Floyd once sang, life is long and there's time enough to kill today. I find it fascinating to read the works of people who lived thousands of years ago. Seneca, who pointed out that we are not given a short life, but we make it short, and we are not ill-supplied, but wasteful of it. Life is long if you know how to use it. If you stop and think about the way that you talk about yourself with others, right? If you talk about, well, I am of this religion, I am of this sexuality, I am of this gender or this political persuasion or ethnicity or these things that we tend to use as labels. Some of those things, right, it's fairly undeniable, I think, when you are able to see some of these elements, right? But I think today a lot of these things are up for debate in ways that perhaps they haven't been even a few hundred years ago, right? Race, ethnicity, sexuality, gender. But ultimately where I am concerned, because I've seen the same psychological effects in my life, is that understanding yourself ad infinitum, it never of itself gets you back to actually taking the photograph. It never gets you back to actually coming to a knowledge of the truth, which is wisdom applied. I've had some profound personal breakthroughs, which sounds like I hear myself say that, and I worry it comes through as some sort of a gloating or like hyperbolic description. But what's wild is I don't know how else to describe them. The peace I've found of actually doing some of the things that I thought I knew about for a long time. Things involving being able to process some of the things that happened to me earlier in my life, being able to understand my feelings of resentment and frustration towards people that I have long told myself unknowingly that, hey, no, you're a loving, you're a loving friend, you're a loving child, you're a loving parent, all these things, right? And yet, by sitting down with the feelings and actually trying to apply the mindfulness techniques, right, and sitting down and really trying to become aware of what I'm feeling and going through the process of ugly crying and sitting there and not running away and disassociating with my desired strategies of video games or just being alone, trying to do these things with the right tools and actually doing them instead of just watching lots of videos on the internet about psychology and shadow work and Jungian theory and all this stuff. That's all great, but it's the doing of the work. If you want to capture the photograph, then you need to put your finger on the shutter button. If you want to understand yourself, step outside the labels that you are using to tell yourself and others why you can't do something, and instead use them as springboards of understanding that you may say, well, this is why this type of thing may be a bit more difficult. Maybe. But let's go try it. And don't try it with the idea of, well, it didn't go perfectly, so it failed, right? Black and white thinking there. And if it failed, it means I knew I was right all along. Failure is just calibration. Things not going perfectly, because whatever is perfect in this world, things not going perfectly, that just means you're calibrating the instrument. You are the instrument. Don't sit around watching videos of other people talk about how they calibrated their instruments. Go out into the world that you feel you need to and calibrate. Just calibrate a little bit. Sit down. Pause for a moment. Let's do this right now. Let's do this right now. Pause for a moment. What sort of sounds do you hear around you? What does it feel like when you touch your hands, or maybe if you have your hands resting on your lap or behind your head? What do you feel? Right? Feel maybe some coarseness of my hair, the fabric of my pants. What do you smell? What do you see that maybe you haven't noticed before? The corner of this room, the small little divots in the drywall that I've sat here hundreds of times. I don't know that I've noticed that before. Now, take a couple deep breaths, 4 seconds in, 7 seconds out. One more. So now, how would you finish this sentence? I would really like to. Tell me out loud. Maybe try this. Today, I would like to. Start there. Start there. Now, you may have your mind rushing and going, well, but this is a recording. Neil doesn't even know what I said. And I said something like, today I'd like to be left alone by my kids. Today I would like it if my friend called me up, but they won't. Today I would like it if I could have a candy bar or eat some French fries. Okay? Applying the wisdom doesn't have to be in itself, every act, a wealth of profound experience. That's the key thing to understand. We try to intellectualize things to make it feel fancier, to make it feel smarter. And yet, something like eating a French fry can have a profound experience in it by just sitting there, putting your phone away. I'm guilty of it. I understand. Put your phone away and taste the French fry, right? If you're going, I just really want to be left alone, you don't have to be left alone for hours. You can simply go and tell your children, your spouse, your friends, your whatever, look, I'm going to set a timer. I just want to have 10 minutes. And if that's not really all that, possible in your situation, because of, I can imagine lots of different scenarios, then explore ways to make it happen. And only need 10 minutes. Walk around the block. Go into a different room. You may not always be able to do these things right now. I can't go get a French fry from the corner of my drywall over here. But these thoughts are the putting your finger on the shutter button of the camera of life. Take the pictures. Take the pictures. Take the pictures. Don't wait.